What's up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. My name is Haley, otherwise known as the Fictional Scholar, and today we are going to be doing a breakdown storytelling analysis over the anime Bungo Stray Dogs. Now, Bungo Stray Dogs has had 3 seasons so far, and season 4 has finally been confirmed and announced. I am so excited. I know it's going to be such an awesome season. I cannot wait for the release date for it to start airing to come out so that I can prepare myself mentally for everything that's going to go on in that season. But Bungo Stray Dogs has quickly become one of my favorite animes of all time due to mainly the storytelling, the depth of the plot that is in here, and honestly the characters in this show are absolutely fantastic. They are so well constructed and put together, and very, very in-depth characters, especially Dazai. Dazai is perhaps one of the most complex characters I have ever seen in a show because there's just so much going on in his psyche, in his mind, but you also can't fully grasp everything that he's thinking, everything that he's doing. But in this video today, we're going to be looking at all 3 seasons and how each season kind of continued to build and build on itself, and why each season is great in its own regards, and how it sets up not just for season 4, but it gives us a lot of really good content regarding the characters we see in here, a lot of the foreshadowing and plot and world building as well. So we're going to look at all 3 seasons and really take a look at why Bungo Stray Dogs has become such a highly regarded anime and why so many people love it, including me. Easily has made my top 5 of all time. But of course, this is your spoiler warning. I will be talking about everything in season 1 to season 3, and then at the end I will kind of talk about how where season 3 left off, like what we can expect from season 4, like what seasons 1 through 3 have really brought up and built up to expect from a season 4. So without further ado, let's go right into the video. So season 1 really takes off on this little journey of really introducing us to the world and to some of these characters. Season 1 is truly a great start to the show because it builds up the world we are seeing in Bungo Stray Dogs so well. We know that it's taking place in Yokohama, but it's more than just that. You know, there's these abilities that have different powers. There's people that you don't want to run across, like Akutagawa. And then we have our main character, Atsushi, who obviously has a lot of PTSD, a lot of trauma coming from this orphanage that kicked him out because of the ability he was born with. And season 1 does a really good job of not only establishing how Atsushi comes into the detective agency with Dazai pretty much taking him in and, you know, being introduced to everybody in the agency, but it also does a really good job at establishing some villains in a sense, which the Port Mafia are villains per se, but they're also not at the same time. They operate on a very similar level of the ADA, of course, but they have a lot more sketchy means to an end, especially with how Mori kind of operates in the shadows, everything of that sort. But it is neat to notice that the Armed Detective Agency, the ADA, and the Port Mafia are a lot more similar than what first meets the eye. And season 1 really establishes that kind of commonality by connecting Akutagawa and Atsushi. Like, they are very similar characters but on opposite ends of the spectrum. We kind of see these similarities get fleshed out a little bit. They're kind of teased in season 1, and then in the later seasons it just gets fleshed out more and more, and it's more obvious, like, oh, these two are very similar for 2 completely different reasons. But you're very easily able to draw those parallels because of all the groundwork that season 1 does. Season 1 also does a lot of groundwork with the plot of why Atsushi being the were-tiger, the Jinko, why him being a were-tiger is such a huge bounty, like why he's so desired by other people. And it's a good way to get our main character more involved than he already is. And Atsushi not knowing what the were-tiger significance is a really good way to keep the viewers in the dark as well, because we're finding out along with Atsushi why this is so important and what meaning this has. All the world building and with the focus on characters, I like how season 1 goes like kind of episode by episode in a sense of giving us some character focus. There's focus on Kunikita and Dazai, there's focus on Rampo, there's focus on Yosano, Kenji, Tanizaki. It takes the time to really get you connected to these characters that could have easily just been like, oh, well, they work in the ADA, but you know, the main character doesn't really have a relationship with them, like, or we don't see that growth, we don't see how he interacts with them. But no, Bungo Stray Dogs takes the time to really flesh out each of the ADA's characters. And I really like that because it gives these characters that we weren't sure were going to be really part of what was going on, it gives these characters more meaning and more importance to the story. Season 1 also has a great way, like they connected Atsushi and Akutagawa. It also showed this past connection with Chuya and Dazai, because Dazai was originally from the Port Mafia, so of course he's going to know people from there. Of course he's going to have some old acquaintances and an old partner that he worked with. And when we're introduced to Chuyo, you can tell that like they had worked together, they knew each other, and it creates yet another contingency of how the Port Mafia and the ADA are more similar and more connected than what it seems to be. And then we have Kyoka, a Port Mafia assassin who comes over to the side of the ADA. So it's yet another kind of connection between these two and gives them more reasons to interact, more reasons for them to potentially work together. And all of that groundwork is set up in season 1. And I really like the season 1 finale where the guild is introduced, where you really see these villains come in and just act like they own the place. And in that game with Lucy, which again is another setup because Lucy becomes such an important character in season 2 and season 3. She is set up at the end of season 1 as someone you would think of as a villain or an antagonist, but you can already tell by the way she's talking, the way she's acting and interacting with Atsushi, that there's more to her than just being from the guild. So that's also done really well. And the end of the season 1 finale, I think the biggest thing is the setup of Mori Ogai, this reveal of the Port Mafia's boss, the head of the Port Mafia that we hadn't seen up to this point, is Mori Ogai, and he's introduced in a really cool way. I love the way they went about introducing his character as if he's looking for Elise Chan, and he just gets basically it seems like he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, but he ends up helping Atsushi out and then gets Elise at the end and leaves, and it's like there's more to this man than it seems, and then boom, he's revealed to be the Port Mafia's boss. I love that. For all of season 1's greatness, it also gets a lot of flack because sometimes of the way it focuses on characters is a little weird. Tanizaki and Naomi's relationship is bad. But also I've seen a lot of complaints that they make the Port Mafia out to be these really intimidating, really fierce and loathsome characters, only for them to be like beaten by the ADA members and all that, so people automatically assume the Port Mafia members are weak, which I don't particularly agree with that, because we're shown that these characters are strong and they are intimidating in their own regard, but that's to show how strong, and a contrast is to show how strong the ADA members are, because that's how Atsushi is supposed to feel safe. He's supposed to feel like he can find a home there, is because they are able to protect him. They're able to hold their own and stand against these strong people. And it gives him a sense of relief because he doesn't feel like he's constantly dragging them down or dragging them into danger because he knows they're strong enough to face it. So I actually really like how they did that because I believe the members from the Black Lizard Squad and like Octagawa, even Higuchi, like they all have a lot of strength and they're very strong characters. And I don't think them being beaten by the ADA makes them weak. I think that's just a good way to set up how strong our ADA members are. But from season 1 to now season 2, I love how Bungo does this. They do these backstories at the beginning of season 2 and season 3 to give more insight into this extremely complicated character of Dazai. The first 4 episodes of season 2 are solely focused around Dazai and how he ended up leaving the Port Mafia, and it focuses a lot on his relationship, his friendship with Odasaku and Ongo. It really centers around those 3, and we kind of get to see more of Mori Ogai and how he operates, how his strategist mind works. But we also get an insight into Dazai's character of how dark he really was and like how he treated his subordinates, how he treated Octagawa in the past compared to how he would treat like Odasaku and Ongo. Like it was such a big contrast, and when you first watch it, you're like, how does someone as goofy as Dazai become one of the most feared Port Mafia members? Like, you wouldn't think it would make sense. But then when you see how Dazai's mind works and how he's able to set up these traps, how he's able to figure things out so quickly, but then also some of the actions that he takes, you're like, oh, yeah, this guy was not a good person back then. Like, he was super, super dark. But I love that Bungo really just focused on that and kind of shed some light on this very mysterious character that has been kind of developed and shrouded in mysteries in the first season. But it also gives us a huge, huge lesson on why, you know, Dazai got Atsushi and pretty much took Atsushi in. It tells us why Dazai has become a good person and the promise that he had made to Odasaku after Odasaku has died in his arms. That arc is one of my favorites. Even though it's only 4 episodes, it is so, so good. There's so much there to unpack and digest in just 4 episodes that like you can watch it several times over and still get something new from it. And it's such a heartbreaking little arc too, like with Odasaku, but then like also like the children, the little orphans that Oda was taking care of. Like that entire arc was just devastating. Like seeing where Dazai's mindset was, seeing how dark his thoughts were and what he was thinking to the way he was acting, and then with Odasaku's death, all of it was just, it was so heavy, but then it gave you such an insight to who Dazai was. That's so much of what he does in the present time and what he's doing, you're like, that makes so much sense. And for me, it broke my heart even more learning that about Dazai. And then season 2 continues back to this conflict with the guild, the Port Mafia, and the ADA. And the more like you see Dazai interacting, some of the things he does, you're like, yeah, no, I totally get why he's able to do that now. Yep, it makes sense because you have that context now. So I really love how season 2 started off that way and they did that first off. It just made it that much more meaningful, and it amped that season up so much, in my opinion. Like, it made it so much better. There's a lot more plot build up, like especially surrounding like Fitzgerald and the guild and why they're after Atsushi, because Atsushi is told he is this tiger beetle to find a book. Now in season 2, we're not told exactly what the book is, but Fitzgerald wants to find it so he can bring his daughter back. It's very personal reasons for why he's doing this, but because he wants to get this book, he's willing to do anything to get it done. So you have this plot buildup of, you know, what this book is, and this book becomes this mysterious kind of guiding post of where the season's going and why everything's happening. But then you also have a lot of story payoff because of these relationships that were kind of teased in season 1 with like Atsushi and Kyoka. Like they really bonded and became really good friends, and Atsushi really sticks his neck out for Kyoka so much, and Kyoka is wanting to overcome herself to protect Atsushi and also to escape the demons of her past from the Port Mafia. She wants to prove Akutagawa wrong. These complicated characters and relationships still continue to go, and they continue to build, like Atsushi reconnecting with Lucy once he's taken on the Moby Dick, when he's held captive there. He gets reconnected with Lucy, who was set up in season 1, and Lucy ends up helping Atsushi escape from the ship because she's kind of on the fence. She's been wavering as well, and she wants to help him out because she thinks he can be the one to save all of these people that are suffering from Q, his ability down at the ground. That is one thing that season 2 does really well. It continues exploring these different ideas of abilities and really showing like how dangerous and how messed up some of them would be. Like with John Steinbeck with the Grapes of Wrath, he stabs a knife into his neck and then puts a grape seed in there, and it's like that was such a disgusting that made me like curl, and I was like, how do you just stab your neck like that? Like, ah. But then, you know, we get other cool abilities and also scary abilities, like with Q and his ability of mind control. Like, that's terrifying, and the way it's used in season 2 to instill a lot of fear and a lot of chaos is very deadly actually, because he does so much damage, even though at some point it's not really his fault. He's not intentionally doing it. But then of course we get like Cthulhu with Lovecraft and everything like that, and it's so cool to see all of these different abilities from the guild kind of mesh with the abilities from the Port Mafia or the ADA. So like Akutagawa and Nathaniel Hawthorne with the Scarlet Letter, their abilities ended up being very similar to each other in how they attacked, and you know, John Steinbeck and Cthulhu, they had kind of similar abilities and like the range of what it did. I really love how they're just expanding on these abilities, because all the abilities, they have like these sets of rules and guidelines that they go by. Like with Dazai, even though his ability is no longer human and he can turn off abilities just like that, he has to be physically touching someone to be doing it. But besides like the buildup of the abilities, there's also the continual buildup of these further relationships with Akutagawa and Atsushi, like them really kind of being foils of each other and very, very similar in regards of how they act and like the motivations behind their actions. And it's interesting to see like how they can relate to each other so much but also hate each other's guts, because they constantly think the other is more blessed than they are in that resort. And it also gives a payoff with Dazai and Shuya. Like, we knew that they had a partnership in the first season, and we finally got to see some of that in action, because Mori knew like that was the only way they would be able to rescue Q and pretty much defeat Cthulhu and John at that point. So he was just like, no, we're gonna let them do a team up one more time. And it just gives us a sense for be like, oh, like these guys were like best friend, like frenemies pretty much back in the day, and it was so much fun to see them interact and everything like that. I love the fight sequence at the end of season 2 where they're on the Moby Dick. Akutagawa and Atsushi are teaming up to fight Fitzgerald, and I think that's such a cool thing, because it really is just so much payoff of all the buildup that's been happening from the start of season 1 all the way up to the end of season 3. There's been so much buildup of these two very similar characters coming together to work to defeat a common enemy, and we got that story payoff, and their fight was so epic. Like Atsushi really like finally getting in touch with the tiger within pretty much, and Akutagawa using that demonic armor. Like, it was so cool to see. And at the end of season 2, we are introduced to yet again, or at least teased yet again, to another villain, another threat that is coming, and that is Fyodor. Fyodor Dostoevsky. And Dazai already knew he was coming, which is why he intentionally put Akutagawa and Atsushi in a place that they would have to team up to work together, because Dazai knows that it's going to take more than, the team up that him and Shuya used to have. It's going to take more than that to be able to defeat Fyodor, and that is Akutagawa and Atsushi. Of course, season 2 ends off with Kyoka joining the agency officially. She has passed her test. It leaves you a very ominous feeling, because you're just like, who is this guy that hacked into the system of the Moby Dick and was about to plunge it into Yokohama? Because you're not really shown anything about who he is. It's just like you see his face. Season 2 did a really good job at not giving too much away about Fyodor, but giving you just enough to know that, oh, this guy's a threat that we haven't seen yet. Okay, we're going to be seeing him soon. I really like how they did that. But also season 2, besides all the story payoff and the relationship building, it also is a lot of character payoff. Like some of the character development that kind of been placed bits and pieces throughout season 1, especially regarding Atsushi and Kyoka, where Kyoko seems to be tied to this demon in her past and what had happened with her, and we're starting to see kind of like this progression with her of she's overcoming herself and she's not wanting to be bound down or tied down to her past, and she's trying her hardest to change, to do the right thing, to prove that man wrong, not just to prove him wrong, but for herself. She wants to become who she really is. And we start to see that at the end of season 2, and I think that's such a really good character build-up and character payoff for her. And then with Atsushi, he was super skittish in season 1, and he didn't really know what he was doing with his were-tiger abilities because it was pretty much unknown to him. And in season 2, while he hates himself and he hates the tiger in him, his tiger ability, throughout season 2, there's these small moments where he finally kind of starts coming to the acknowledgement of like, no, thank you for what you've done to me, and he's starting to acknowledge the tiger in him and really start to accept his own ability. And that scene at the end of season 2, especially with the fight against Fitzgerald, Atsushi is really able to dig deep and draw out some of the fullest potential of that ability because he's starting to come to terms with it. I think, again, it's just a really good character payoff. And then, of course, we get to season 3, which that season is so fantastic. So season 3, again, starts off with some backstory with Dazai and Chuya, kind of how they met and how Chuya came to be part of the Port Mafia. And again, it really just kind of sheds more light on, the way Dazai interacts with other people and how dark he really was. Like in season 3, episode 2, where he's standing over that guy who is pretty much already dead, and he's just shooting him over and over and over and over again, and he's smiling, he's saying, oh, this is more than you deserve. And Chuya's the one that stops, and he's like, stop shooting dead bodies. And then Dazai stops, he's like, oh yes, that would be the normal thing to think. I love the backstory because it really goes into Dazai's mentality, especially with the part where Mori asks him, he's like, why do you want to die? And Dazai's like, is there really any value to this thing we call living? My boy needed some help. He still needs help. But he really needed some help back then. Which is why I think it's a really good thing that he did meet Oda, which once you see the flashback from season 3 and how Dazai was really kind of before he met Odasaku, you can really tell like how much Oda influenced Dazai's life and influenced like how he really got to be able to change. And I think that's really cool to be able to have a season 3 flashback that doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the flashback in season 2, but you're able to easily connect the two together and see those parallels and see like how that stuff came to be. It is really cool to see some of Chuya's backstory laid out and like how he is involved and like how his ability and his powers work and how their little friendship rivalry started. It's so much fun. So that's the first 3 episodes of season 3. We get that wonderful, wonderful backstory. And then Season 3, episode 4, I think, oh my, the introduction to Fyodor Dostoevsky, like, I think that is probably perhaps my favorite episode to introduce a villain ever. If I'm remembering, like, I've sat there and I've remembered all the ways like we've seen villains introduced in different shows. My favorite thing is how they did it with Fyodor, because it is mind games galore. Like, you think you know what he's doing, and then you're like, no, this isn't it. And you think you know what his ability is, and it's like, no, he was lying. And the way he just completely outsmarts everybody in the room while staying so composed, so calm, and the way he's able to like even the little things like memorizing the cards, like the scratches on the cards so he could win the game, to further help his case of, oh, well, I'm an ability space user, you know, because that really builds up Fyodor's character of being this insane mastermind, like genius level intellect mastermind who has it out for the Port Mafia and the Armed Detective Agency. And you're just like, that's what we're up against? No wonder Dazai called him a demon. Like, Dazai is another person with genius level intellect, and he's calling Fyodor a demon. And we finally get to see like what that's really meaning. I feel like Fyodor's introduction is like the ultimate villain intro, because even though we're shown like some of his capabilities, you still can't tell like what the full extent of his capabilities is, and we still really don't know what his plan is. All we know is that he's going after the ADA and the Port Mafia, but you don't know what he's planning, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy's coming. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm terrified. For the next 3 episodes, Fyodor is kind of absent, and it focuses more on the ADA, the Port Mafia, and the remnant of the guild with Fitzgerald and Louisa. So in episode 5, we really get focused on like kind of like what the Armed Detective Agency is doing, and then we get some awesome awesome like character building with Gin Akutagawa. You know, we didn't know that Akutagawa had a sister, and that gets revealed in the episode in a very comical way, I think, to kind of take away from the heaviness of the previous episodes. And it kind of is presented in a comical way, but you sort of just like, whoa, Akutagawa has a sister and he cares about his sister. You know, he's around her all the time because they both work for the Port Mafia. But his sister being revealed as Gin is such a really cool little bit of information, because it adds more to both her character as an assassin, and it adds more to Akutagawa's character as a Port Mafia man. And then in the next episode, we get so much fulfillment with Kyoka and Atsushi, in particular with Kyoka finding out the true reason why her parents were killed, and the knowledge that she didn't order Demon Snow to kill her parents, that her parents were protecting her because of this really messed up situation that happened, and her mother ordered Demon Snow to take care of her and protect her daughter. You really get this resolution for Kyoka that helps kind of free her soul and gets her to move on and press forward towards her goal. And I love that Koyo from the Port Mafia, someone who has a very similar ability to Kyoka, is the one who gives her that information, because it shows that, you know, Koyo didn't just want Kyoka back in the Port Mafia because she has a similar ability, or because, you know, oh, well, you belong here. It was more than that. She truly, deeply cared for Kyoka and wanted the best for her no matter what the situation was. And I really respect Koyo for that. And then Atsushi, oh my gosh. The anime kind of toned it down a little bit with Atsushi and like his backstory and how he was treated at the orphanage. But the way Atsushi kind of gets this resolution with his old headmaster that ends up getting hit by a bus or by a truck. His old headmaster gets hit by a truck on his way to see Atsushi, to most likely congratulate him for what he had done on the Moby Dick and everything, and he gets killed on the way to seeing Atsushi. And Atsushi, of course, has so many mixed feelings about this. He doesn't really know what to think or how to react. There's a lot of like denial and mixed feelings it gets to the point where, he's asking Dazai, he's like, what do I do with these feelings? He's like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And Dazai, I know this has kind of been disputed a lot in this episode, which is why I think the manga explained it better. Dazai was saying, like, normally when a person's father dies, you cry. Because, yes, the headmaster was terrible to Atsushi. He tortured him for no reason, or for no good reason. The headmaster had a reason, but it was really twisted and really messed up. Despite all of that, he was the only father figure that Atsushi had in his life, so good or bad, having that father figure be gone from his life, Atsushi still felt sad, which is why he still ended up crying despite, everything that the headmaster had done to him. And, Dazai even said, he was like, you don't have to forgive him. But even if he was a horrible father, it was a father figure nonetheless, and that's why Atsushi needed to let out those emotions and not try to hold them in. But it was such a really cool episode, very complex, and it really kind of gives this resolution for Atsushi of kind of overcoming his past and getting to a point where he can truly step forward and start to try to forget about those shadows of the past and everything that he went through at that orphanage. And then, of course, with the 7th episode, we get Fitzgerald rising, and it's really cool to see this focus on the character like you never thought you would see again. And Fitzgerald it's really basically his rags to riches episode, where he is able to get back in power and get back into like a state of wealth while also remaining more humble than he ever was, because the fight with Atsushi and Akutagawa really humbled that man. And him and Louisa team up, and they are able to acquire the Eyes of God, which is a great way to set up for the last of the season. And then we get the next few episodes is just complete and utter chaos in season 3, with Fyodor really starting to make his move, and the mind games that go on with Dazai and Fyodor are just so fantastic. I love seeing those two interact because their level of prediction, like they've already like planned like 10 steps ahead, and they're both with each other like all the way. They're just like, yeah, I know you're gonna do this, and I know I'm gonna do this, but I also know I know that it's literally two geniuses just going at it, and everybody else is really just kind of struggling to keep up. And the cannibalism ability is really creepy and terrifying with how it'll come to life and pretty much kill you from the inside. So the Port Mafia and 88, despite them having such a kind of civil relationship so far, they're being forced to fight each other because Fyodor pitted them against each other so cleverly. At the end, still the Port Mafia and the 88 ends up working together. Also gives us more character focus on Moriogai and Fukuzawa and how they used to work together in the past, and how they had this connection with Natsume Sensei, who we had seen since season 1 in the form of the cat. But, they had been commissioned pretty much by Natsume to have these organizations to kind of keep Yokohama safe and in balance. So while they've been enemies per se, they've always kind of been working towards the same goal. And it's just a really cool thing, because once you know that fact, you can look back at season 1 and season 2 and really see how that goes into play. The Port Mafia and 88 end up teaming up once again to bring down Fyodor's little plan, and Akutagawa and Atsushi just go to town. And that last fight that they have is so epic. I love when Akutagawa gives Atsushi that jacket, and like it's just like it looks like where Atsushi was is just sunken down. And it's so cool how Akutagawa's ability is used as a support to Atsushi. The mind games with Dazai and Fyodor, like Fyodor was never in that base, so they're like, oh well, where is he? Dazai catches Fyodor, and Fyodor is sent off to prison, so you're like, oh, he's already in prison, well that's it. The finale leaves off with some knowledge that it's not completely over. The main giveaway being that Dazai is not satisfied and he's not pleased. Like usually if Dazai is happy about like the conclusion, he would act like it or he'd be his normal goofy self. But Dazai is asking Atsushi like how it was working with Akutagawa and how that whole situation turned out because he knows it's gonna be needed again in the future. And also there's a moment where he's just kind of looking out across the ship and Dazai does not look happy. He does not look like he is satisfied with what's going on because he knows deep down that something else is coming and something else is going to happen. So season 3, while it's not a very obvious cliffhanger or anything of the sort, there's enough there that it's more than what it seems, and you're just like that hasn't been completely resolved. Plus the idea that in season 3, the book that was mentioned in season 2 was revealed to be this book that anything that is written in it becomes true, and Fyodor is seeking that book. It gets more of this like, oh, that book is still out there. We haven't found that book. That plot hasn't been resolved, and that's still going to be an issue. And so there's that huge plot piece just kind of dangling at the end of season 3 that hasn't been resolved. Plus, with the way Dazai is talking to Atsushi and the way he's acting, you can tell that there's more going on than what it seems. And that is a good way to kind of subtly set up for season 4. So I really do believe that seasons 1 through 3 do such a great job of building up the plot, building up all these characters, really connecting these characters together, giving them all unique little relationships and things of that matter, while also giving us some much needed backstory on characters like Dazai, but also we get some backstory like on Akutagawa and even Atsushi, Kyoka. We get these backstories that kind of make us relate to these characters, make us understand like their motivations, the way they act, why they act like they do, and it sets up so well for what will be going on in season 4. So with that being said, what can we expect from season 4? If you look at the anime alone, like what you can expect from season 4 is something to do with the book is the biggest thing, because the book has not been found. That whole thing has not been resolved. Atsushi's true connection to that book has not been discovered, and you can guarantee that as smart as Fyodor is, he still has something to do with that and with that plot, so you can almost expect to see him later, because if Dazai had truly beaten Fyodor in that moment, he would have acted like it. He would have expressed it. But because Dazai knows Fyodor, because he's faced him in the past, like in the Bungo Stray Dogs Dead Apple movie, you know, Dazai has gone head to head with Fyodor before, so he knows Fyodor. And he knows that it's not gonna be that easy. Fyodor and the book are probably the two biggest giveaways for what you can expect in season 4. And I'm so excited! I am literally like so stoked to see season 4. I am a manga reader, so I know kind of the things that are happening in the manga right now. And I'm really excited to see some of this stuff animated because it's so good. And I really do believe that the storytelling in Bungo Stray Dogs so far, the way it orchestrates its characters together and connects them all together while also building up, I haven't seen a lot of other shows do this, but it's a very slow build up for the plot. Like season 1, you kind of know that Atsushi is wanted for something, but you don't know why he's wanted. And then season 2, we're introduced to the idea of this book that Atsushi is supposed to be this tiger beetle for. And then in season 3, it's revealed what the book contains, like what the book is about. And I really kind of like how they do that, because it's a very slow plot buildup to something that you know is really going to have an impact later on, despite not knowing what it is at first. I really enjoy that because it gives us so much more time to focus on the characters, but also so many of the other subplots that are going on throughout this book, or throughout this anime, because Bungo Stray Dogs is not just it's not a linear show, and it's not a linear anime. it's all over the place because it's such a complex storyline. You know, a lot of people often have trouble explaining what the plot is because there is so much going on. It's hard to tie down what the main plot of the show is, but it's because the reveal of the plot is like a very slow build throughout each season, that it's like, oh, this book is what's really important. Like, that's where this plot is leading. That's where season 1, 2, and 3 have kind of led up to. But it's never really the main focus because so much is still going on underneath. And I really like that because it gets overlooked so easily that people forget about the book's existence, which is dangerous because you know what this book can do and you know who's looking for the book. So not knowing like where the book is or how to get to the book, it creates that much more tension for the storyline because you're just like, no, like they have to go after like, or they have to fight the guild, they have to fight the port mafia, they have to save the boss, like they have to defeat Fyodor. You know, there's so many other things going on that the overarching purpose for all of this, which is this book, gets kind of hidden in the shadows. And that's such a clever storytelling trope because it takes the viewer's attention off of what's really going on and it gets them distracted to the point where it's like in season 3 they're talking about the book again. You're just like, oh yeah, the book, I forgot about that. So that's why I think in the 4th season they're really, I think they would have to focus on the book because it's been the whole plot build up from season 1 through season 3. Bungo Stray Dogs does have a very complicated plot and it's not easy to explain, but I think it's very well done. It's all just like this very intricate little web of plot and storyline mixed with the characters, how the characters interact, these relationships with the characters who are villainous masterminds who stay in the shadows and, you know, always have these plots, create such a fantastic show. And again, I think I said this in my Tokyo Revengers analysis that Bungo Stray Dogs and Tokyo Revengers have some similarities in the regards of how intricate their plot is and how detailed everything is. And I stand by that because there's so much thought that's going on in both of those shows that like you always have to be paying attention to what's going on or else you're gonna miss something. And I love complicated storylines like that. That's me personally. I love storylines like that. But that is my storytelling breakdown analysis of Bungo Stray Dogs season 1 through 3. I'm so excited for season 4 to come out because once it does and it finishes, I will probably be doing an analysis over season 4 just because I love the show so much. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about this. If you agree or disagree with some of the things I've said, just let me know and we'll have a conversation. I don't mind that at all. If you think there's something really major I've left out about some of the storytelling or in any of the seasons that you think need to be talked about more, also let me know down in the comments and I'd be happy to make a video about it. But other than that, make sure you're following all of my social media down in the description. I'll link the Tokyo Revengers review that I did down in the description below. It'll also be in the corner over there if you want to go watch that. If you have something you would like me to analyze, let me know down in the comments. If it's something I've seen, I will definitely be able to get to it. And then if it's something I haven't seen, I will put it in my schedule so I can watch it at some point. But if you want to support my mom and I's Etsy shop, the link is down in the description below as well. But other than that, that's all for this video. I hope you all have a great day and I will be seeing you later. Bye!